Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris P, and I am joined with some parents, some Rush parents from around the country. Jenny and Mr. Mick, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves. They seem to have froze.
I'm Jenny Mick, and this is James Mick. We have two sons. We're through Kansas Rush. Our oldest is an 04, and our younger one is an 06.
Brilliant. Thanks. Ingrid, we'll go with you next.
Hi, we're in Virginia Beach. We're part of Virginia Rush. I have two girls in the program, a 2010 and a 2015. So she's actually in the School of Excellence program.
And I had the pleasure of coaching her this year, and I learned so much from her this year. She is the sweetest child. Mr. and Mrs. Bynum.
My name is Antonia, and this is my husband, Dalen. We are with New Mexico Rush, and we have three boys. Our oldest just graduated high school with the Rush 03. Our middle one is with the Rush 05. And our youngest is anxious for Rush Fest next year, and he's a 2010.
Brilliant. And over to Isaac. You have to unmute first, Isaac. There you go, champion.
Well, sorry, Chris, I couldn't hear anything until right now. So what was your question?
Just introduce yourself and tell us which branch you're with and then what age your child is.
Oh, hey, hi everybody. So we're in Virginia Rush, Virginia Beach out here. My son is 11 years old. We've been with the club since, 2017 or so. Out here in Virginia Beach, started at rec, went over to competitive, and we're having a good time out here in Virginia Beach doing what we do.
And Isaac also coaches within the program as well. So anyway, so here's how we're going to frame this conversation this evening. This is to discuss with parents, and I should share that the people we've got on, their children are maybe if we were splitting it into thirds, I would say that your children would fall into the top third. So maybe this is not a true and fair reflection of how parents feel around tryout time, but this is what we're trying to get to. And I want to ask first, I'll go with Isaac. Isaac, how do you feel around tryout time?
I mean, I feel anxious a little bit because I worry that and like you said, I know that my son is a good player, and I fear that at times he doesn't at tryouts sort of take things as seriously as he should, because he's a fairly decent player, and he may feel like he's already earned something that maybe he hasn't. So he may not show as well as he really should, simply because of what he feels his standing may already be. And that's always frightening for me, because I understand that if you don't earn it, then it's not yours. And anything can be taken away from you at any time. And where he hasn't quite learned that yet. And I'm afraid that he's going to learn that the hard way one of these years. So that's how I feel. Okay,
brilliant. Ingrid, anything to add to that?
I feel the same as Isaac. I haven't had the feeling where I was afraid that my daughter was going to be cut. So that anxiety is gone, but I feel all the other parents. I'm a very social person, so I'm talking to everybody, and the feeling is very uneasy. Am I going to be with this person next year? The unease of not knowing where your standing is on Rush. I think that makes people a little uneasy. It's just assumptions. So I haven't felt that anxiety. I even asked Addie, do you feel anxious at tryouts? And she said, no, I just go out and play like I normally do. So I think it's different for every parent, but it's definitely uneasy.
Brilliant. And a couple of things, and we'll come back and visit those. What I like you said there, I like what Isaac said too, but I like that you said that Addie's not anxious, so the parent's actually getting comfort sometimes from the child, right? As opposed to the other way around. And the things that coaches don't sometimes consider is the social dynamic of the parents, and the parents wondering, well, who am I going to be standing with and supporting with next season? So we'll revisit those things, but brilliant points there. Antonia and Mr. B, who's also a coach, but a different kind of coach.
Go ahead, Antonia.
Tryouts here in New Mexico usually happen. We're not quite finished with our season yet. Just, it's weird how the time falls. So sometimes we already know that there's going to be players leaving. Not sure who's going to come to our tryout. There's 2 main clubs here in Albuquerque. So there's always amongst the parents, and I think the players too, who, if they want to try out for another club, are they staying with our club? Our tryouts are pretty casual. You show up and you wear these numbers, and the coaches are out there with their clipboards, and you don't really know till we go out there how many boys are going to try out. We don't have a huge club, so we pretty much know who's coming, but every once in a while, you don't know who's, if there's a new player or new players. I know for me with basketball tryouts, my work at a school where my husband coaches, I'm always worried that kids are going to get cut. I kind of feel that I want them all to make it. So that's sometimes what I feel sometimes. And I know that's why he's laughing, because there have been some times where I can't even go because I know not everyone's going to make it. If there's 12 players on the team and there's 30 boys trying out. So I've never had experience cuts like he has, but our son did one time not make an ODP team, and he cried and he cried and he cried, and we just held him and we hugged him. And I'll let you take it from there. What advice we told him.
Yes, and for me, just to go back, mine's a little bit different too, because I used to be a volunteer coach with Rush. So my middle child, I actually coached him for about 3 years, coming up through Rush, and I went from just having 1 team to about 3 teams, just going through. So a lot of it for me is coming out, and a little bit of what some of the parents explained is that, you don't know what team the kid's going to be on. And so for my oldest, or for all 3 of my kids in going out, they've just had that benefit of me being a coach. And I usually talk to them beforehand, letting them understand that, you're going out, you're there for a team, but you're also there for your own individualness, just to go out there and, just to have fun. So a lot of times when the tryouts come, they're out there and they're just more socializing with their friends, and just doing what they do, what they love. They don't even really think about it as a tryout till afterwards, and they're waiting for the coach to call them or anything like that to kind of confirm they're on the team. But most of my boys, when they go out there now, or even before, it was just, it's just another day out there at the field and just having fun, to where it's kind of like the parents are sitting there, okay, well, what team are they going to be and everything like that. And so I've just always stressed to my boys, just have fun when the tryouts come. And kind of what Antonia talked about before, the only stressful part is a lot of times the other clubs are doing their tryouts at the same time. And so my wife's a social butterfly, and I'm the one that just kind of sits in the side. And so we get phone calls from coaches all the time. They're recruiting us, come over here, come to this club. They know our boys and we know their kids. And we just put it to our boys, do you want to go play for Rush or go for another club? And they're just like, nope, it's Rush. So they just go out there and just have fun. And so the tryouts for us is just more kind of like a formality, but it's just understanding the process with them. So.
Brilliant. I love what you said there, Mr. B. And we'll come back to process in a bit after we hear from Mr. and Mrs. Mick, who are in Denver right now, because Eli, their 07, is guest playing with Hawaii Rush at US Club Soccer Championships.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm a pretty anxious person to begin with, so I definitely experience a lot of anxiety around it. I found that if I volunteer to run check-in, it's always better than me, sitting there watching or talking with a lot of the parents. But I agree with what everybody says. I don't know that I get so nervous like specifically for my kids, just the whole process, and there is a lot of talking, you know, amongst different parents, and you know, I heard this, you know, such as our club is pretty well in Kansas City. We have the largest the largest number of soccer players per capita. We play in the Heartland League, and it's the biggest league in the country. And we have multiple clubs in Kansas City, and there's always, you know, this team's going over to this club and this team's going over to that club, and, you know, merging and stuff. And so I think what stresses a lot of the parents out the most is the fact that, you know, you'll show up at tryouts and there will be, say, 35 kids at one age group. So enough for one team, possibly enough for a second team, but probably not enough to make a full third team. And so there's just a lot of questions as far as that goes, you know, well, wait a minute, where does my kid rank among here? You know, what happens if there's not enough for this third team? And like Mr. Bynum said, our tryouts are all at the same time. And, you know, you just, if you don't know kind of where you stand going into tryouts, then there's the question of, should I try out for another club? Should I not? How do I do that, especially when the times overlap and all of that? And we kind of had that with our older son this year because they combined the 03-04 age group, because we joined the Elite Academy League, and they only have an 03-04 group. And so, you know, we didn't know number wise if he would be able to make the team. And so it did help with the coach saying, hey, look, if there's room, yes, he would make the team. He would probably be one of the bottom ones. If I were you, I would probably, you know, check out another club. And he did try out with another club. It's the first time any of our kids had ever tried out at any other club. So that was an experience. But he did end up making the rush team. And so it all worked out. But I think that's a lot of people's concern and anxiety is just, you know, okay, I know how my kid did last year. I don't know who's coming in. I don't know who's leaving. I don't know how many other people are coming in. Oh, look, we've got in between number of teams. You know, what's going to happen? And I kind of feel like the communication with the coaches, like, and I understand that they can't, you know, from the beginning, you know, say, okay, we're having 3 teams. And, you know, I know numbers change and all of that, but I just kind of feel like if throughout tryouts there, you know, was some way that you knew, okay, these kids are the top 4th, these kids are in the middle, and then these kids are the bottom, just so that they have a chance to work harder the next day if they need to, or know, you know, just so that they can kind of go in the next day with, here's what I need to do better. Here's, you know, what I can do for the coaches. Here's what they need to see, just kind of stuff like that. I don't know. Do you have anything to add?
We are blessed with I think a lot of clubs in Kansas City, but it's really diluted the number of some of the teams, and everyone seems to want to be on the top team at their club. And that makes it incredibly difficult for all the clubs to operate, because it seems like we get 1, maybe 2 teams per club. And I think it makes it a real challenge. So to my wife's point, it's tough when you get into those 25 people trying out or 30 people trying out. Do you have enough for 2 teams? Usually not. And I think that makes it a real challenge for not only the clubs, but for the players as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I did some of the parents, I see you nodding there. Did anybody have anything to add to that? Because I think there's been absolute gold dust so far from a parent perspective, but also a coach's perspective. Coaches and club leaders who will watch this later and pick some ideas. But then also parents, you know, who will watch this later, probably nodding, going, that's exactly how I feel. Isaac, Ingrid, Bynums, do you have anything to add to what the mix said there?
The one thing, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Isaac.
Go ahead. Mr. B, go ahead. And then we'll go to you, Ingrid.
All right. Well, the one thing I agree with too is a lot of times it's tough knowing the number of teams that are going to be in the age group. And a a lot of that too is based on, you know, how many kids are going to come out for tryouts. Because two, again, if you only have 15 kids, then yeah, of course it's going to be one team. But when you have that number that's right in the middle, and then you have, then you have some kids that were playing last year, and from the outside, especially as a coach and then as a, parent coach, you're looking, I'm like, okay, well, if you're trying to make that team that's going to travel, well, there's a couple of kids that, probably will be replaced, but then you're out there talking with the parents and, they're good kids and everything's like that. So it's like, okay, well, how do you have that conversation, or how do you kind of go through and say, okay, well, you see new kids coming in and you're like, oh, well, I can see those handful of kids are much better than these ones. I don't know what the coach is going to do, how that's going to play out. And I think that's kind of what everybody's talking about just in that area. You just don't know going in. And so from the parent standpoint, that's where the stress kind of comes in, or just the anxiety, because you're like, okay, well, we only have one team last year. Now there's enough out here for maybe one good one and one development one. Kind of where the kid's going to fall, and what is he really thinking of my kid? But then your kid's out there socializing, and you're like, come on, kick that ball a little bit harder. What are you doing? So just kind of sitting back. So I think that's just the one thing in terms of communication, kind of knowing that, okay, maybe after the tryouts, okay, we have an idea of how many teams we're putting out there. So then you can kind of gauge, because, I think every parent kind of knows where their kids are, and you feel, my kid's the best. And, we all know, and we're just kind of sitting like, okay, I can see what my kid needs to work on and different things like that. But it's just that communication of knowing, okay, this year we're having two teams. Okay, well then that's fine. I don't need to go try out for another club. I know my kid's going to be on one of these teams. Or if they're just going to have one team, then it's like, well, shoot, we should have went to that other tryout that occurred at 6 o'clock and ours is at 5. We could have left early and got there. And I think that's just the biggest thing in terms of communication that is lacking, especially on our end here as well.
Yeah, and I think that goes throughout most clubs, but I'm going to come back and revisit that as soon as we hear from Ingrid and then Isaac.
Okay.
Ingrid?
I just wanted to add with that point from the Mick family, knowing what order you kind of are on the team, I think is helpful. I think some people are very hard on their kids, so they might think they're further down in the pecking order, I guess, and some have a different idea of where they really are on the team. And I think being split into top, middle, bottom, you kind of know where you are as you go into tryouts, that maybe this is something that this team isn't a fit for me. I'm on the bottom. Maybe I need to look at, moving somewhere else or having options because I'm on the bubble. I think having that would be a useful tool and maybe alleviate some stress.
I think that's huge. And Isaac, I'll come to you and then I'll add a couple of things.
Okay. Good. Yeah, because I was gonna say, and it's hard because I'm a parent and a coach, right? So and I care about the development of the kids, and I try to come with a down the middle sort of analytical approach to it all, right? And as the Mick stated before, they were talking about being on the top team, and people want their a lot of folks are concerned about that top team, I guess allure in that position and stuff like that. Whereas
so they get the price tag and the travel.
Well, agreed. But as Ingrid was saying, you have the kids that are on the bubble as well, and they're paying the same price as everybody else. But also, if you're that kid that's on the bubble and there's not enough space for that third team, then I say, sure, maybe you look for a different club that maybe has a higher level team for you to play on, because there just wasn't space. But on the flip side of that coin, if you're simply jumping clubs because your kid didn't make the top team, he's on the second team this year, and now you want to go, I want to go to this adjacent club because my kid can be on the top team. Like, to me, you're no longer doing things for the sake of your child. You're doing things for the sake of that status, right? In which, you came to a club for a purpose, which is your kid was having fun and making friends and they're developing, right? And if they're developing, and your team was on the top team this year and on the second team the next year, it's not that your kid didn't develop or anything like that, but maybe that second team is going to give your kid the ability to develop better, be the stud on that team and actually get the touches that they need to then develop, and then maybe even surpass the guys on the first team. Now your kid's the stud. He's the kid that everyone's looking for leadership, and he's going to grow and blossom in that position versus where he'd be on the top team, sitting on the bench, maybe not getting as much touches, maybe not getting the ball, So, that's the hard part that I was dealing with just recently, last year going into this upcoming year with a lot of kids, kids just chasing these positions, and you're like, dude, these kids are getting exponentially better every year. What are you chasing? And as a coach, it's difficult to watch, but as a parent, I'm going to stay the course. That's all I'm going to do.
I think some key things that came out there, right? Communication, the word communication came in 3 or 4 times. And I think historically, clubs have been horrible communicators, right? We don't have this forum where we can discuss with parents. And sometimes, and I was just thinking as we were talking, because I was involved obviously in Virginia's tryouts, but I was also involved in Kansas Rush's tryouts to see how it operates this year. And I know the boys from New Mexico, right? So, I think clear communication coming in, but I think as from a club standpoint, if we were to say, based on the numbers that are currently signed up for tryouts, this is the number of teams we're planning on making, right? But again, that's based on if everybody stays, and if parents are also being transparent, because I don't think the clubs have been fully transparent, and I don't think parents are, right? And sometimes it's to CYA, right? I'm gonna do that, but I think it's also really, really important that coaches start now to communicate and have, whether it's individual development plans for children, right, or an evaluation, and the parents are brought into the loop with that meeting. So, for example, I know that Addie's coach is going to meet with Addie every 6 to 8 weeks with the parents as well, and give little progress reports. I think it's pivotal as clubs and club leaders that around tryout time, we should share with parents, hey, your child is in the top third, the middle third, the bottom third. This is where we see. But I think there's sometimes fear, right, that parents won't like to hear that. And I think the group of parents I've pulled on, like I said, your children are usually in the top third, so it's easier, as opposed to and some of you have a great view of where your child's at, and sometimes we wear the rose-colored glasses, as I'm a father of 3 as well, and sometimes we have on the X-ray specs where we're picking faults in their game as well, right? Ingrid, you mentioned this, that we're too hard on them. So I think it's pivotal, though, from a club standpoint, that we're able to say, hey, tryouts are coming up, or placements are coming up. Your child is in the top third, your child is in the middle third, your child is in the bottom third. Okay, we just want to alert you. We just want you to know that this is where we're thinking. The caveat to that, for me, is also, though, because if you were in the top third on a second team, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make the first team. Right? We have to start comparing apples to apples as opposed to apples and oranges. The other thing that clubs that we need to be better at is we need to understand that every player and every child is getting picked up and dropped off at a different bus stop. Do you know what I mean? Because everybody's coming from a different background, situation, et cetera, and we have to do better in understanding what bus stop they're at. And to be fair, I've not seen many 12-year-olds or 6-year-olds play at World Cups yet, right? But what I have seen is 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds and 12-year-old kids have an immense passion for the ball and for the sport and for getting better, which serves them better going along the way. As a parent of 3 teenage boys, I always tell them, and when I coach, I'm coaching. When I'm watching my kids, I'm not coaching. I'm sitting there, I hardly say a word. right? And then it's up to them if they want to discuss it on the way home, you know. But, you know, I think the picture that sums it up best, I think there's a picture of Messi and Suarez when they were together at Barcelona, and their kids are playing and they sit back and they say nothing from there, just watching their kids. And these are two of arguably the best players in the world, who are just like, don't have a care in the world, probably because they're pay packets, but they're just watching their kids, you know, go through a game, whatever. So I digress. Anyway, so communication is key. I think, what do you think as parents, if you were told, hey, your kid's in the top third, the middle third, the bottom third, how would you feel as parents about that? I'll start with Isaac, and then we'll go to Ingrid.
I mean, I think it would be helpful, to say the least. I mean, parents have to be realistic, and they have to know what other people see. You know, they don't have to agree with the evaluation, but if you give it to them early and often, at least they have time to accept it. And if you're being transparent with them and telling them, then they'll know. You know, they'll be able to accept it and then start to truly, I guess, make those comparisons within the team at least, and accept it, and then maybe start to invest in helping their child grow in the proper way. You know.
Good, I like that. Ingrid?
Yeah, I agree. I think being honest and realistic with parents is important, because everybody sees different things. I talk to parents and their ideas of who the star is and are all different. And so I think having the coach break it down that way, then you can decide, if I'm a bottom player, do I want to work harder? Do I want to put time in? Do I want to have a conversation with my child? I'm spending a lot of money. Is this where we want to be? Is this a good fit? Or would a second team be a better option, or a rec or an advanced option? That then you can have real conversations with your child. Do you want this enough? Do you want to be in the backyard kicking the ball? And have really good conversations with your player as to where you want to be and how you want to grow.
Yeah, I like that. And Ingrid brings up a valid point there, which is, you know, are you the driver of their bus and their development? Are you the one telling them to get out in the backyard because Sally, Jimmy, Susie are doing that, or doing 1,000 juggles? Or are they self-motivated and getting out there themselves? So that's huge. Mr. and Mrs. B, and then we'll go to the mix.
So I've been in education now going on 24 years, and I don't think there's any school at any level that will only evaluate at the end of a season or a school year. So I think starting that communication at tryouts from the coaches and continuing throughout the year, I will say our club is inconsistent with evaluations. We, though, as parents, will ask, you know, we will have conversations with the coaches throughout the year and get feedback. I know that in the instance that we had mentioned where our middle one didn't make an ODP team, we didn't know why. And it would have been nice to get that feedback to turn it around. And so it's ironic, because the very next day, he had to get in the van and drive to the Rush Select tryout. And when he was very upset, and he made that Rush Select team. And I remember we were so happy, and we just had to say, go out there and try your best. We don't ever, and we never have, and we don't, there'll be times where we are upset with the coach, but we talk about it together as parents. We don't say it in front of our boys. So it's, mindset, attitude, communication with our son. And, I think for him, at the time, it was so hard as a parent to see him be so upset, but then just a week or two later, wake him up in the middle of the night, because we were so excited because he made, Rush Select with the 05 team, and he did it all on his own. So for him, it's a good learning experience. And, you know, our oldest is going off to college and he knows that there's 30 players on that roster and playing time is earned. So I think it starts at the club level when they're little, and yes, they need to experience tryouts, but communication, if they see your parents modeling that communication, then hopefully, you know, as we send our oldest off in a few weeks, hopefully, you know, he'll be an advocate for himself, but also he's going to have to talk to the coach too. How do I need to get better? How am I going to earn that starting position? Because we want him to know that don't expect to make, you know, the starting 11. You have to earn your spot. So it helps with, you know, every aspect, not just soccer.
Brilliant. Spoken like a true teacher. Good job, Antonia. Thank you. The mix.
I was just going to say, I would piggyback off of that. And the one thing that I think is the boys and the girls get older, I think it's important to know where they rank. I think it's critical that the kids know as they get older, so they can start advocating for themselves, so they can start that process of learning that it's their responsibility more so than the parents. And as they transition into that age where they need to know that, and they need to be the ones who take that responsibility. So I think as they get older, hopefully the coaches communicate with the kids and not so much with the parents. And when you're younger, yeah, that makes perfect sense with the parents. But as they get older, I hope it transitions more to the kids and the coaches having those conversations.
Yeah, I think the parents are an important part of the loop, Mr. Mick, simply because, you know, having teenage boys, you know, which you do, as I do, you can ask them a question and how was it? Fine. You're talking to coach for 10 minutes. What do you say? I can't remember. Nothing. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to have a couple of target points and standards, and whether it's not a casual conversation, but a conversation. But, you know, before we share our favorite Rush memories, here's what I'm gathering. And I know in Kansas we have one team, one club, one family. You know, Rush all over has a motto: once in Rush, you're always in Rush, unless you choose to leave, right? So Rush has this beautiful thing that they don't cut players, and they always try and find a place for every player to play at the appropriate level. Now, a parent may disagree that that's the level for their child. Parents may want other things, and sometimes it's the parents that push, and then without asking the child, right? But I think it's pivotal that as a club, you know, that we communicate clearly, and not just before tryouts, but also do it 2-3 times a year, and just whether it's a general speed like a speed dating thing. Okay, Antonia, Mr. Bynum, how's it going? Lamar's doing great. He does very well in this area. He needs to work on winning the ball out of there. He's heading. He needs to work on his left foot, and then just tracking his runner. These are key points that we're going to be focusing on. So if you see me do the signal, Lamar and I have discussed this, and then in 8 weeks we're gonna see how far he got along that. You just update me on whether Lamar's going out, doing his running, doing his fitness packet before he goes off to college, etc., etc. Now I've given you something, and now I can have that communication with Lamar per se, and the parents are not on their child, but saying, hey, coach said, oh, yeah, I'm going to do it right now. So that piece of communication is critical. The next piece is also letting people know, hey, we see your child in the top third, we see your child in the middle third. Hey, unfortunately at this time, we feel that your child is in the bottom third. However, next year we are going to 11v11. I still send them in the bottom third, but we don't know what's coming through the door at tryouts. So to cover your bases, I would probably look at trying with this club or looking at this program. But, you know, if you work with us, we'll work with you. You know, because just at tryouts where parents get blindsided, clubs also get blindsided too, and coaches get blindsided because parents haven't shared their intentions. And I think if we can create this relationship, right, of trust, honesty, and being realistic, I think it's a more holistic approach which helps the child, as opposed to parents against coaches, so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, every coach I've ever met, they want to win, but they also want to develop, right? I've never met a coach Mr. Bynum, you might be able to testify to this as well as you, Isaac. I don't think you've ever gone into a game thinking, I've got to lose this game just to balance us out a little bit. And sometimes it's the adults that want it more than the children.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think that communication is key. Consistency, whether it's an evaluation 3 times a year or a conversation, but knowing you're in the top third, the middle third, the bottom third, I don't think is too big of an ask. I think it stops coaches being able to hide, essentially. But I also think it would be good for clubs around tryout time to say, hey, Miss Weeks, for the 2010 girls, we've had 40 players register. If everybody stays, it looks like realistically we could get 3 teams out of this. However, I don't know whether the club would be that transparent, simply because, if you end up with 15 kids, parents might be scrambling and going, I got to go to this other club because this club's not going to have anything for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do think, clubs communicating, hey, we've had X amount of players register. I don't see that you're registered yet. Hey, get your friends out there, because there's in every business, dropped a pen, sorry. In every business, I think, if you have somebody pleased with you, they're going to tell 10 people. But if there's somebody upset with you, they might post it on social media or, and that goes further. So I think sometimes, parents can be the best recruiting tool. And when I was actually in Kansas Rush and here in Virginia, I would ask parents their stories. And I want parents to be honest about the club, as opposed to, and I think I did this to Mrs. Weeks too at the SOE. I asked her to speak and talk about your experiences and what they've been like, because it's important that other parents hear from parents, on the experiences and what they think clubs could do better or what they think that clubs are doing well. You know what I mean? So I've rambled there. So I'll succinctly put it: communication, consistent evaluation and feedback for parents and players 3 times a year, and then letting parents know and players know when they're older, right, where they stand, top, middle, or the bottom third. And as coaches, we probably won't get into comparisons of children, because as you guys know, who all have, with the exception of Isaac, who have multiple children, your children came from the same genes, and children in the same household are extremely different, right? I know my 3 boys are so different. So sometimes it's unfair to compare with other kids the same age who have come from completely different bus stops again. Listen, I've taken enough of your time. I do want you to go around the room, and we'll start with the Mix first, and just share with us your favorite Rush memory, and then we'll go to Ingrid, and then Antonia, and then Isaac, and then we'll wrap it up. So the Mix, one of your favorite Rush memories, and it's okay if it's Italy, Mrs. Mick. It's okay.
Yeah, I think my absolute favorite was we were staying in Montecatini, which is the small town where the tournament took place. And we were all downstairs eating together in the restaurant. And this is a group of boys, 1 or 2 over here might know each other, a couple over here knew each other, but for the most part, they did not know each other. And one of them grabbed their cell phone and started karaokeing. And these boys, all in that room, they had the wait staff dancing and singing along with us. They had people coming in from, other people from the hotel coming in. And it was just awesome that, these kids that didn't really know each other bonded, and, just, it was hilarious. We were all laughing, and they still talk about that. So, yeah.
And they sang the Rush song. So
they did sing the Rush song too. Yes.
I love it. Ingrid?
I have 2. Just every day at Rush, Addie walks into practice. Every single coach says hello to her by name. Some of them even have nicknames for her. And being only a U12, the fact that all the coaches are so invested in knowing who she is and her development and making her feel like part of a family, means everything to us. And we had a tournament, I think it was Memorial Day, and my daughter gave pass to a girl that's never scored the entire year to win a game. And she said, my favorite memory was just embracing her after she scored. So to me, I was like, I must be doing something right here. That she was so delighted that that girl scored.
That's lovely. I love that. And so typical. And I can see where Vivian gets it from. Vivian is the best U6, the kindest U6.
Aww.
She's so you're doing something right. Keep going. Love it. I love it. Thank you. I got goosebumps.
Thank you.
The Bynums.
I'll share mine and then you can share yours.
Alrighty.
I think, well, we've been with Rush for 14 years. So we have a lot of great memories, but I think one of the most memorable things was walking into our very first Rush Fest, having no idea about Rush Fest. And you could hear the kids screaming before we even walked into the convention room. It was in Denver that year, and my jaw just dropped at the kids and the energy. And we were so excited to go in 2 years again for the 05, and we are just even so excited for a whole year now. We have to wait a year. So I think for us, just for me, Rush Fest, I really saw on a larger scale what Rush is. And that's something that I tell all of our New Mexico Rush families or future Rush families when they ask me about, what do they think about our club? I always just say it's amazing, the Rush family across the world. And that's mine. We're so excited for next summer.
I love it.
I have two, and it's a little bit kind of from a coach's perspective, and two. One is just the coaches in New Mexico, their interaction with the boys. They joke around, everything, nicknames, just like what was mentioned before, and they have truly developed a relationship with them to where, my boys, they look forward to going to practice. It's not a chore or anything. It's like they want to go, they want to be out there, joke around with the coaches and everything like that. The other thing is just going to different, especially when we go to tournaments and there's other Rush teams, just to stop and watch that you'll have Rush teams stop supporting another team. They may not know anybody on that team, but yet they see the jersey and they're stopping there, they're cheering. Just seeing that from a club perspective and just going out, knowing that there's other clubs there and they have teams, but they don't have that same kind of bond that just seems to just come naturally from being Rush. So I think those are the two things that really get me, that where I just go through and really share that when they're thinking about Rush, or if they're thinking about leaving, I'm like, what in the world are you thinking of? And so just kind of putting it that way, but those are my two.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing, Mr. B. Isaac, best Rush memory? You have to unmute.
Yeah. There we go. I'm telling you, I'm a data systems guy too, so this is really embarrassing. But
you're gonna have to fix my glitching camera, Isaac.
I know. I think it's a storm that's out west of me right now.
Yeah.
So I've got a few because I coach and I watch my son play and everything else. But one of my favorites was a couple years ago over at HRSC. Chris, you were there because you coached it. Isaac was playing goalkeeper and he got cleated right before halftime, and he was really upset. And the referee didn't even call a foul, nothing. And a couple seconds later, they pull Isaac out of the game, and he's really upset. He's frustrated. We put in a new keeper, and Chris goes, "Hey, talk him down. Chris puts him in the game and says, "Go score, big man." And they call him big man. Isaac's giant among boys. And he goes down the field. He scores the first goal, and he just forgot about everything that had him upset, And like, we're looking at him, thumbs up. He blows his mother a kiss, and he goes and does it again. And we were just like, everyone's going crazy for him because he was so upset, and like he just forgot all about it. And that just the way Chris handled that situation, and how the parents on the sideline were just so ecstatic and exuberant, like just the support that he got from everybody. It's just like just like you guys said, that atmosphere, that family, you know, that support, because everybody knew he got fouled, and it was just great to see those families come together. And then the other one I think was in a tournament in Richmond. Our boys were just having a heyday, and one of the boys pulled off a bicycle kick off a free kick, and the boys, you would have thought they won the World Cup. I mean, they were jumping around, you know, and they're 10-year-olds at the time. They're 10 years old. This kid does a bicycle kick from a free kick, and they're jumping around. It was amazing, and it was just great to see. And it warms my heart because, you know, just see these kids develop from 6-year-olds to 10-year-olds, and yeah, those are my favorite moments when the kids are together and everybody's just happy. So that was it for me.
Brilliant. Guys, thank you. Listen, we've been on longer than I wanted to be, because I wanted this to be brief and I wanted the conversation to be organic. Just thank you all for being such great Rush parents. Keep flying the Rush flag and keep doing what you're doing for your children and all other children. And safe travels, and I will see everybody soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.